Let's give them another hand as they take their seats. So I will let them first introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm John Shee. I'm the producer, writer, director. I'm one of 3 producers on the movie.
Mark Sikes, casting.
So we all know that it takes a village to make a film. So if there's anyone in the cast and crew in the audience you'd like to acknowledge.
We have 4 of our wonderful cast here. John Knox is in the back. Please stand.
A little closer.
Wajid is here. Our lead actress, Amy Mata, is here. And our lead actor, Brett Rickaby, is here.
Congrats to all. We're going to jump in, and we always like to start these conversations off with the story and script, because that's obviously where we start. So can you talk a little bit about where the story came from, how did it get into script form, that process?
Yeah, I had recently become a dad, and it had been about 10 years since I graduated from film school at USC, waiting for someone to hand me a big check and say, go make your movie, right? And as most people know, that doesn't happen very often. And so, the conventional wisdom is you go make something that's people are going to go pay money to go see, and I figured if this was my one shot to make a movie that I was going to mostly self-finance, I wanted to do something that was really meaningful to me. And so I just become a dad. My priorities completely changed. My life changed. We had gone to war in Iran, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and I thought, when you become a parent, you think, what kind of responsibilities do I have now for my kids? And immediately, all the kind of notions of writing something very, very conventional kind of left. And I said, I wanted to be able to leave something behind for my kids to help them understand the world that they're going to grow up in. And, if you were to kind of write something ultra commercial for your first feature, this would not be it. It's something that's, complex and challenging, but I was driven by a higher kind of purpose, I think, and that was to kind of leave something behind that, I could really say, if this is the only film I'm ever going to make, this is something that I'd be proud to leave behind and have my kids watch and say, okay, this is the time that I grew up in, and what are the complex issues that I have to get over, in my lifetime.
Great. And then did you write it by yourself and then add your team of producers? Kind of talk about how to, once you kind of got the script, was it you still alone in the adding team, or did you have a team already set up?
One of my closest friends, Casey Poe, who's not here tonight, he's in Asia, but he's kind of like the person I bounce most of my creative things off of. We met at USC in film school, and he's, my producing partner, and he and I kind of built this team, and we knew very early on, even from the script stage, that this was going to be a challenging film to make, especially at the indie level, where you're going to have to do most of it yourself. And he is, my most trusted colleague, one of my most trusted friends, and I said, look, do you think we can do this? And, if you don't honestly believe from a producing standpoint we can do this, you shouldn't do it, friendship aside or not. And thankfully, he enlisted Mark, one of Casey's former colleagues and good friends, and Mark was one of our first people on our team, and I said the same thing to Mark. I said, this is going to be a difficult film to make, and I want you to only do it if you really believe in it. And that became our mantra. Our team building mantra was, we had to convince people that this was something important enough that you had to do it, and you weren't going to get paid a lot. You're going to work really hard and commit yourself and dedicate yourself. So if you don't feel passionate about it, and that's my job, that's our job as producers, to make you feel passionate about it, that this is something we can do and we have to do. And that's how we built our team. And Casey's a big part of that. One of our other producers who's not here tonight, Alex McCullough, was a really, helpful producer, and our co-producer and line producer, John Conrath, he's not also here, but he was a big part of our team also.
And I just want to throw in one thing, because we do have cast members here, and back me up. They had like the nicest crew, totally, that I've ever worked with. And I'm not saying it because I'm sitting next to him. I visited the set a lot, and I have never, there wasn't an obnoxious person on the crew. Nobody was yelling. This guy set the tone. And that is the bar now for me, to work on crews where, like, the wardrobe person, the makeup, nobody had attitude, nobody was obnoxious. It was just a great crew there committed to making this film. What?
We won't mention the location.
Gee.
Can you, Mark, explain how you knew Casey and how you kind of got signed on the project?
I'm a huge fan of USC's program. The student filmmakers there are just geniuses a lot of the time, and the kids, they're so into it. And I am always jumping into a student film, not just USC, but I've had the best luck with USC. And I got pulled in on a short film called Out of the Shadows back about maybe a year and a half before we settled down to do Tentacle 8, and Casey was the producer on that, and I had worked with the director before, and they brought me in, and we had a great time. Casey really got to see my passion for putting a great cast together, whether it was a student film, low budget, I don't care, I treat, I started with Roger Corman, and he teaches you, we don't pay a lot of money, but you get the best cast you can get, because that brings the film up. And so whether I'm doing a short film, a web series, I don't care what it is. I want the greatest actors possible for the day player roles. I don't care.
Nice. Can you talk a little bit, then after the producing team, how did you kind of flesh out the rest of the team? Was it just all people you knew, USC connections? Kind of how did that all kind of work out for you?
It's a mix, a combination of that. I think team building is a really important part of, and Mark said that, we had, when you're producing a movie at this level, you have zero margin for error. And so, for any film, pretty much, if you have a huge budget, you might be able to make a few mistakes. On a low budget film, you might get away with one. For low budget film, you almost have to get everything right. And so in order to do that, you really have to get like-minded people. And that's, Mark cast an incredible film, and the cast that he found to be in this movie, I can't tell you enough. It's just, it's,
Thanks.
And it's not just the right people, but it's the mindset and their commitment to the work and their willingness to kind of really dig deep. And sometimes at this level, you feel bad because you put so much pressure on the people that you work with, and there's so little returns, at least from the get-go. You're not sure. And we found people who just love the work, and a lot of that is Mark's effort to really sift through and find the right people, and we really didn't have any bumps at all. We really kind of coasted through that. It was a long process.
A lot of people who were maybe even a bigger, better, pleasant surprise. We knew they were good, but then when we hired them for a small part,
right.
They just exploded. They were just even better.
Right, and that was kind of the same. That happened almost in every department. I think the way we approached it was we really wanted to find people that we could trust and not micromanage them. You don't have time to do that. So you find the people that are really good at what they do, they're really passionate about what they do, and it was up to us, the producers, to constantly guide them in the right direction and say, we're on track, and to constantly remind them that, the purpose is we have to get this finished, and to do the best we can every single day and be precise and make sure that we take care of every single detail, because pre-production for an independent is really the only time you have to map out all the potential things that could happen. Because once you get on set, you don't have the resources to say, oh, you know what, generator went down. You don't have the resources to go get another one. You know, so you have to do all of that in pre-production. And, you know, thanks to the, you know, we had Casey and Alex and John were a really good producing team, and they brought together the best crew, you know, that I think I could, you know, as a first-time filmmaker.
Yeah, and they look like they'd been producing for years together on the set. I don't know if you had the perspective of that, knowing them and working with them, but just someone visiting the set, watching these guys work together, it was like a TV show that had been working for 2 years. It's really good.
Nice. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys funded? Was it mostly out of pocket? Did you do a little
you know,
Kickstarter, or how did it go about doing that?
We had a couple, we had 2 investors that gave us kind of an initial kind of startup. The rest was, you know, I had, prior to going to USC Film School, I was a management consultant for about 6-7 years. And I would not recommend this to anybody, but unfortunately, liquidating your retirement savings is not good. You know, that I would not recommend that. You know, that's probably the last thing you want to do. But I think,
But you're not the first to do it, I
yeah,
bet.
you know, I think you come to a crossroads where you decide. I had waited a long time for someone to say, "Here's a check, go make your movie." Time was the issue, and if I had waited for someone else to say, "Okay, you know, if you just make these changes, I'll give you another 10,000," we said, you know, that's the positive thing about being the writer. Also, is you can change 30 pages if you work at it, and it costs you nothing. And you can shave off maybe $40,000, $50,000 from your budget if you just make those changes creatively. And, you know, that's what we had to do.
So, kind of getting more into the casting now. What was the conversations, director, producer, casting director, that you guys had before you started auditions? Was it?
Well, you can read the script and get a good tonal sense, and I sat down with John and Casey even before I had the job, and we had like a 2-hour meeting, and we just had a love fest about the movies we loved. And I think I walked out of that meeting feeling like, well, if I don't get the job, that was just a great meeting, and it was really fun, and we talked about that meeting for months. But we did absolutely get a tonal sense, and I think we hit a chord on 3 Days of the Condor. Right. I'm a huge fan of that movie, so right away I was like there. And John said that in that first meeting, and I was like, oh, God, I want to work on this movie if we're going to do something like that. So from the tone and that sense, for me, that immediately influences the people you're going to bring in. You know, there's actors that live in that place and others who can go there, and then I know a lot of actors where it's not as easy, but, you know, we saw a lot of people, and Amy and I had worked together a decade earlier, and half the cast were people that I had either worked with, knew, had read, of course, you know, that's the job. But I felt very confident with a lot of the people. Bruce Gray, that was maybe our 4th film together. Loved Bruce, and he was a Man in the Fisherman's Hat. Right. I got to get the men all straight. That was the challenge in casting. You didn't want to insult it's the Man in the Fisherman's Hat, right?
Well, it was hard because, I mean, in the script, you know, I mean, you could tell, like, one of the things I didn't want to have done, and one of my pet peeves in movies is, you know, like, if you go see a medical drama, you'll have these world-class brain surgeons, and in the middle of a complex surgery, talk about, like, basic chemistry or something, or physiology, and they wouldn't do that, you know. And so, unfortunately, a lot of the character names in the movie had these very abstract.
They sounded like extras.
Yeah, and Mark has a great story about that. It's like a lot of these people were just man or man in suit. Or,
man in hat,
and,
man
you
in
know,
suit.
if that goes out to breakdown services, like, oh,
Woman.
great, you know, I can't wait to play man in suit, you know, but.
And I've got agents going, look, you know, I like you, but
Right.
really, I'm going to send my guy in to read for Man in the Fisherman's
Right.
Hat.
Script is interesting, but I got to get something better than Man in Suit or Man in
At
Hat.
least the first name.
Yeah, my credibility was tested. Thank God. The script was fantastic, so thank God, because agents were like taking this huge leap of faith every time I'd call a good agent and go, "I'd like to read your client for woman." And they were like, she just got off a series. Are you kidding me? Woman? I'm going to tell her. And I said, you got to trust me. And I'm honest. When I'm casting Dino Croc, I tell people I'm casting Dino Croc. The problem was the name of the film was Tentacle 8.
Right.
And starting with Corman, everybody thought I was doing the new, Sharknado-ish type thingy. And everybody was pleasantly surprised, but it really took a leap of faith on a lot of people just to read the script and go, okay.
And I think, we're really lucky for a low-budget independent to get someone like Mark to cast it. That's first and foremost because, Mark's experience and background in movies and just lent the film immediate credibility. And, thanks to Casey and thanks to Mark for taking a risk, because without that,
I would have killed to cast this when I read it and realized there wasn't an octopus.
Right, no.
There's no monster. I get to cast something where everybody doesn't get eaten.
Right.
My last movie was a zombie film. I'm like,
We did have a couple disappointed people when they got on set, though. So.
they thought it was like
They were looking-
Pacific Rim or something.
I think this is a great time to tell your guard number 4 story. I think this applies to what we're
No,
talking
it
about.
ties right into it. One of the characters in the breakdown, and it was down a ways because the film has so many great character-driven roles. One of the characters about, you guys have seen a breakdown, it's about 15 roles down. It's guard number 4. And that was murder because, forget woman, at least Man in the Fisherman's Hat sounds colorful. Guard number 4, that's just, that's a really hard sell. And the submissions reflected that. It really did. And then when you look at the script, it's this gut-wrenching emotional role that you could, you can't cast an extra, this needed to be done from the same talent pool that we pulled the leads from, This was a hard part, and it was in and out. It wasn't in the whole movie. And that was probably, the guards were probably the toughest. And guard number 4 was the best part, arguably, I think, of the guard. It was the meatiest part of the 4 guards. So the worst thing is, they'd ask, like, well, can they read for guard 1 at least? Guard 1 has got to be a better part, right? Why do you need my client to read for guard number 4? Did they even speak? And I'm like, I'm going to email you the sides. You're welcome. It's the best day player role ever written,
So then the question becomes, as a writer, is the numbers arbitrary for you?
For the most part of the movie, the numbers, almost every number in the movie has a meaning, if it's in the dialogue. And I think part of the fun of maybe seeing a movie like this on repeat or on VOD or on DVD, when you go back and look at it, we don't have a commentary track on it, but there are little things in there that numbers will, if people on repeat viewings will see, oh, what's that number? That number comes up a lot. There are meetings, but in terms of the breakdown, no, it was pretty arbitrary. It's like there are 4 guards, and that was the 4th one. So, but to kind of tag on what Mark was saying is that part of the thing that I did do as a writer is to realize that there are so many incredible actors that, for whatever reason, have not had the opportunity to do what they're best at. And so as a writer, you have to write moments. You have to write scenes that actors can play more than just, and obviously it has to carry some exposition. It has to have meaning in the movie. But if you can do that, Mark found, almost from lead to, guard 4, the caliber of actor was tremendous.
Woman.
Yeah.
Woman didn't woman, and that's Terry.
Yeah, right,
Terry
Terry
Reeves, who
Reeves.
was like a series regular last year on Chicago Fire.
Right.
And she was our casting assistant. She was my reader because she'd been a student of mine. And
Right.
so she came in just as a reader. She was not promised an audition. There was no chicanery. But by the end of all these sessions, she had been our reader. I think she read with all the main people. And she was a fantastic reader. And there was this part, woman. And oh my God,
Yeah.
she's amazing. And it's, I don't know, 7 or 8 lines. It's not a big, huge part, but it's a
Yeah.
great part.
But it's one of the more, when people talk to me about the movie, there are a handful of moments that people remember, and just, they might not have the most lines,
Yeah, no.
but it's just a memorable moment. And, I
Really
think,
well shot, too.
yeah, our technical crew, our director of photography, Danny Grunes, is really, amazing. I mean, most of the people that have seen this movie, are really off by a digit in terms of what they think the budget was.
Yeah.
And so to his entire team, really, it gives the film just more weight, so.
What? How many days did you audition? How many sessions did you have? Do you remember? Oh, he's pulling out his notes.
Remember these?
I have them somewhere.
I have my session sheets. About 15,
10 to
counting
15?
callback.
So then,
At the max, yeah.
open up the curtain. Once you had those auditions, obviously you don't have to talk about the people in the room. What were the conversations you had to determine the person? Was it something that you saw as a director? Was it something that maybe you saw and then you saw? What was those conversations like? Of like, how do we get it down to that one person?
Well, luckily, Mark, I think our first day, Mark and I had never worked together. We had really, really good, positive conversations.
Yeah.
But I think after our first day, he really put in a lot of work. Like, after we left that day, he would look at my facial expression and he would say, did I get this right, or I didn't get this right? And I think I played it pretty straight. I don't think you could tell that often, but he went and did a ton of work. So by the next day, I could already see there were a ton of adjustments already. And he whittled that down, and so like the auditions were really phenomenal, for the most part. I mean, we had like Courtney Dukoski come in, Matt Borlangi come in, and John Callahan come in, and you kind of knew that they read these parts, they came in really super prepared, and you have that moment where you can see them on film. And in most of those cases, I mean, it was...
Well, Joshua Morrow.
Josh Morrow, of course.
I don't even know if you knew this, but like Joshua doesn't read a lot of the time because he's got a job. He's working, every day. And like, there was no beat or hesitation. Joshua was like, I will come in and read. He wanted the part that bad. He played Brian Mosley, and he was like, I will come in and read for it. And he doesn't often do that, and we were very lucky, and he was, again, that was a killer read, but that was the script.
Yeah, well, Josh, he came in, I think, did he become available late, or he always was in play?
Well, I think we had trouble scheduling-wise in getting him in,
right.
only because he was working all the
Right.
time on Young and the Restless, so it was tough.
Yeah, that was one of the ones too, was like, for a director, one of the things that makes a director's job easy is you can connect with them without using a lot of language. If you have to explain things too much, you sap the spontaneity of the moment. And I didn't like to rehearse a lot. I think we had maybe 2 or 3 rehearsals at most. I think that's right. I don't think we over-rehearsed a lot. We didn't have time to, but you could tell immediately in these auditions that it was just a 1 or 2 word adjustment, and the entire tone of the thing just was spot on. And you knew that was going to be a really easy day on set, because you didn't have to go over a ton of technical stuff. They just, and I think that's part of what I was saying about team building, is you just have to find the right temperament, and you have to find the people that really share your same work ethic, and they just love the work. you know, and of course, they're all really wonderful people, and you're really lucky to have that in your first film, so.
Can you give us a glimpse? We saw the final product, but is there some scenes where like you should know what it took to get that scene? Did it like, you know, stop raining for 5 minutes, or did we have to, you know, pay someone to stop, you know, from something, noise happening? Was there any of those scenes that happened for you?
We shot in a woman's prison.
Yeah, that prison that we shot in, we had completely done our prep and our pre-production at a different prison. And we were at our last day of tech scouts, which is your production team goes into the location and kind of looks at the sound issues and where the camera's going to go. And we got a phone call, and I was doing something else, and I could just tell by the facial expressions of Casey and Alex, the other producers, they just like this face just kind of sunk. And I was like halfway across the room, and I could see it. I was like, oh, I gotta go. I guess what's going on? So I said, what happened? And they said, well, you know, that location that we're shooting at first next week, that for 3 days, we don't have it anymore. So, you know, you try not to panic because the prison is like a really big set piece in the movie, and but you know, you just be resourceful, and we found and Alex McCullough had a prior relationship with a police captain that had recommended this prison, and he just was at it, dogged, and we got in there, and I think Chuck was filming that same. We piggybacked off a network show that canceled that week, and they said we're not, you know, oftentimes if you have a network show, they'll book whole weeks in advance, and they only need 2 days, and we managed to sneak in there and film what we needed. So,
My Facebook profile picture
oh yeah, right.
is a photo from that set where we found this. I mean, we were like kids in I know, it's crazy. It was a prison, but we were like kids in a candy store. I'm pretty non-essential personnel, but you know, they let me on the set, and I'm just running around with the actors when they're not shooting, and we're going into all these rooms, you know, where they did mug shots and, you know, booked people, and they're all. It looked like the prison emptied 2 days earlier.
Yeah.
It was clean. It was, you know, lots of rooms, functioning cells, and we took pictures of us getting mug shots. That's my Facebook page now. Love that.
Nice. So we're going to do some final questions, and it's 2 for you, John, 1 for you, Mark. We'll start with Mark. What do you need from a director and producer to best do your job?
Well, a great script, you know, that's a big part of it, because if I'm going to get you actors of a great caliber, especially on a smaller budget, which is usually my job, I've got to you've got to have money to throw at someone, or you better have a great script. And from the director, you know, communication, to know what you want, because you can look at a breakdown and that really could be 5,000 different actors. And so you need to I start with the script, and then you sit down and somebody who's got such a clear vision that John, I don't know that I've ever worked with a more passionate director who knew what he wanted and just had such a vision. It was on the page, it didn't change, you know, oh, well, maybe the movie will be about this, or it was passionate, and that made my job easier, which helped, you know, shopping around Tentacle 8, guard number 4, having a straightforward, and then when they get the script, having it was so character driven. It was like reading a Quentin Tarantino script. It wasn't that flashy dialogue, but it was so rich with dialogue and so rich with character. I probably would say we got the smallest number of passes on this film I've ever gotten in my career. And, you know, it was SAG-AFTRA low, so the money was low, and people knew that going in. And there wasn't very, very few people where the money was an issue with this if they would read the script. So, I mean, that helps a lot when the director is just letting me know and then giving me a great script to cast.
Nice. And then for the actors watching or in the room or thinking about producing or directing for the first time, what is your words of wisdom for them?
Mark touched on it. I think you have to want this more than you want anything else. And I think how you do it, it's going to vary, project to project, day to day, but I think if you can't imagine not doing it, then you will find a way to do it. And I know that sounds kind of fortune cookie-ish, but you have to be resourceful and you have to work hard. And these are kind of the tenets of anything that you're willing to undertake. You're going to have to outwork everybody because you don't have the resources, and you're going to have to be really well prepared because, like I said before, you don't have the resources to make mistakes. You don't have any margin for error. And I think, you're going to hear no a lot. You're going to probably try and get financing from somebody, and you're going to give them a script, and you're going to hear no a lot. And you can't be devastated by that. You have to be convinced that that doesn't mean you don't pay attention to what people are saying. Be very self-critical. Make sure that script, and as Mark said, your script is your template. It is your blueprint, and that's not to say it won't change, because somebody may say that I lost something or we lost a location, and you're going to have to go back. If you're not the writer, you go find the writer and say, that bowling alley, it's now got to be a daycare, because we have a daycare. You know what I'm saying? So you have to be able to make those kind of decisions quickly, and but be driven by your passion. And the clearer your vision, the better, because that will hopefully your script, and like Mark was saying, it really is, we didn't deviate that much from the script. And I think that is one of the benefits of being a writer-director. I can imagine it be a little bit more difficult if you are not both, because you have to, changes are not immediate, and you're dealing with another person. And also, if you're not the producer, oftentimes people are all three because they don't have a choice. But if it becomes a choice, then you have to lead by example. And I think we took that very seriously from day one, that you had to lead by example, because that filters down to everybody in your crew. And we tried to treat everybody the same as part of a mission, that this group of people was going to do something very special. And I think, I think for first-time feature filmmakers, they have to understand, like you said before, that you're not going to do it on your own. And the better the team you put around you, the amount of trust that you give them, and you really can't. It's not you have to inspire them to do it. You cannot tell them to do it, because they're not getting paid enough. There's no reward for them. They can walk off the set tomorrow, and their life is not going to change that much. But for you, you just lost your first AD, you lost your first AC, and now the director is running craft services. So you really have to build the right team and lead by example from the top down.
I think that's a great place to end. Let's give them a hand. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah. They'll be around to say hi and connect with them, and thanks for coming, guys. Have a good night.